This clip is sponsored by Med Travelers. If you're an SLP interested in travel therapy, visit medtravelers.com to get started. I'd love to know just, what are some of the formal measures that you use? What are some of the informal? What does that look like? And I know it's probably not one size fits all, but for the most part, what do you look at?
Yeah, so and like you said, it's not one size fits all, and we haven't identified any gold standards. You'll see that in all the literature. There's no gold standard.
Gotcha.
And one of the reasons for that is that it's also very tricky because mild traumatic brain injury, a lot of times the symptoms or how they perform, their cognitive impairments could be very mild. And so they also can perform extremely well on standardized tests. So it can be really, really hard. But one, having access to the computerized tests like the IMPACT, those are really great. We can administer that, but that can also be administered by the athletic trainers. And that's data that you just have access to. But also you can give, as speech pathologists, you can give them inventories like the Mayo Portland Adaptability Inventory. It's a self-reporting tool, but it's also nice because you can give it to like their coaches, their teachers, their family members so that they can put in input about them. I also really like the R bands. I talk about that one in probably all of the classes and sessions that I do. The repeatable battery for the assessment of neuropsychological status.
Good job.
And the update is nice because it can be given to someone as early as 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I like this one because it's repeatable. Mm-hmm. It has multiple versions. You can give it multiple times without worrying about the test learning effects, I believe it's called. Uh-huh. And so this is good too, because this population, those who are younger, they may experience cognitive changes more frequently than a person who is older. And so they may need to be tested more than one time in a year. And so the R-bands comes in really helpful for that. And it looks at their memory, it looks at their spatial skills, which is important for athletes, that visual spatial. And it does like some cognitive flexibility. It doesn't necessarily give you a lot about language and communication, though. And so in those realms, it is a little more difficult to find really good tests. But if you've ever read any of the works by like Jessica Brown, Leon Terkstra, McKay Solberg. So there are some tests that are a little older, but they can still give you good information. Like the scales of cognitive ability for TBI, the SCATB, or the brief test of head injury. Now, I will say that you do have to be cautious of some bias. There's some age bias because those tests are from the 90s. So some of the materials may not be that great. And then there are some like cultural bias when it comes to like some of the, like if there's proverbs section, they may use phrases that aren't that familiar and things like that. But we tend to use a lot of tests from the neuropsych world. So like the digits forward and backwards and things like that. But we also want to make sure that we are including things that will test their language and communication. So I like to do a mixture. If I do the R-bands, I'm not just going to do the R-bands. I'm also going to do a test that is designed for speech pathology as well. So we can look at language demands on top of the cognition.